Hello and welcome to this video on my flashcards for GCSE. So in this video I'm just going to be showing you some of the flashcards I made for my GCSE English Literature exam. So for literature I studied Macbeth, the poetry which was the power and conflict section. I also did Scrooge and Anna in Spectacles. But I think my brother, who's doing his GCSEs at the moment, has my spectacles notes, so I can only show you my Macbeth and my poetry notes. I've also got some for Scrooge, but I didn't do that many on Scrooge because I found that text quite easy. The first cards I'm going to show you are my Macbeth cards. So this is what one would look like. So these are the cards that I used just for the character of Macbeth. I tend to split my cards up, so I did a new card for a different character. So as you can see, this one is all for Macbeth. So on one bit I've got my key quotes and I've highlighted parts which are easy to remember. I've also got what acts they are from, so when referencing the text I know whereabouts it came from, so then from that I can comment on structure, and already knowing the basics of what happens in Macbeth, it's quite easy for me to make something up along the lines of this happened at the start because of this, and or this happened at the end because of this, and the character's progression in this. And I think on the back I've got more quotes, different quotes that I thought were quite useful, easy to remember, and I also knew what I was going to analyse in each part. I've got some more quotes here. And then moving on from that, I would have techniques that use. So this was mainly the structure-wise, so I've got about soliloquies, iambic pentameter, and then the heroic couplets. And then I've got some more techniques on this side. And then here I've got some context as to why he did it and what was going on at the time which related to the character. So here I've got about deterrence, about others who want to commit sacrilege and it's preventing them from doing that. Shakespeare, being a patron of James, was trying to please him, and he did this through his plays. And I've got some extras here which I thought were interesting, so here are some themes, and then on the back I have got some more themes and motifs. So I've got the motif of blood and sleep, about brave and valiant cousins. This is just my outline of my Macbeth quote for the character. And then I've got my Lady Macbeth cards. So Lady Macbeth is also another important character, so I have more notes on Lady Macbeth than I do for my other characters. Also in my exam, Lady Macbeth was the question that came up, I think. Yeah, it was about Lady Macbeth and a bit ambition, so it's quite lucky to have this. So I tried to make basic notes on at least all of the characters, just so I was covered if any question came up. So here again I have got my key quotes, highlighted the ones that stick out for me, the act they come from, got more key quotes. And then I've got my techniques again, so this is different from what I've got for Macbeth. So I've got my proleptic line, more importantly, later on, iambic pentameter, and I've got my context about witches and supernatural, as is quite common for the Shakespearean time, and I've got my extras, which I just thought I'd like to add on. So that's everything for Lady Macbeth, and that's that. And then next I have Banquo. I've only got one card on him because I didn't think he was that important. I thought he also died quite early on, so there's not as much to write about him as the other characters, for example. So again, key quotes, techniques, and then some context to add in there. So he was a descendant of King James, so you didn't want to present him negatively as it did in the text that this is based off of. I can't remember the name. Shakespeare didn't want to portray him as evil, which he was in the original text. So yeah, that's everything. Got the witches. Now these are quite important characters. I think I probably should have done more on them, as it was quite possible that a question could have come up which was focused mainly around them, so only having a little bit on them wasn't ideal, but we did do quite a lot in class about the witches, so I think I remembered that and was just hoping for the best, really. So here I've only got 4 quotes, which I'm hoping, I guess, I could have analysed in quite a lot of depth, so I didn't need to have as many quotes for them. So I've got my when the battle's lost and won, fair is foul and foul is fair. Just those kind of, their quotes stuck in my head a lot more just because of the way that they were written with the trochaic tetrameter and the rhyming couplets. And I got my techniques, context, which is quite obvious. It was Holinshed's Chronicles was about the book that Banquo was in. Yeah. And then I've got my use and meter as fairies, and I've got my extra with my themes and my motifs. That's it for the witches. And then I have got some on Duncan and Macbeth and Malcolm. Again, these are slightly more minor characters. Duncan dies in the first act, I think, so not much on him. And then Macbeth and Malcolm, for most of the 2 years of doing GCSE, I got them mixed up all the time and didn't actually know who they were. So this was again a last minute thing I did because I was worried that if a question came up I would have no idea how to answer it. So again, quotes, techniques, and then extra stuff. And that's it for Macbeth and Malcolm. Then I have got 2 final cards on my form of the poem, and then on my themes in the play, not poem, in the play. So here I've got that it's a Senecan tragedy, which is used in the Renaissance, and then I've got some key terms which I thought would be quite nice to throw in there if I had a chance. I've got a morality play, visual irony, and just some good things that I'd like to add in there if I could remember them. I've got my themes, which are always good to comment on, and I've explained them a bit. So if they came up, I would know what to say, and it's just little things to stick in my head. So that is everything. And then I've also got a little pack of cards where just some more key quotes. I think I made this for one of my mocks. I just wrote them all out, and I've got a little bit of explanation of where it's from. Yeah, this is quite good to carry around with me if I needed to remember some quotes on the go. I wanted to study if I was out. But I didn't use this much in exam season just because I preferred using my other quotes, and these were quite old. So that's it for Macbeth. I didn't do anything else in terms of flashcards for Macbeth, but I remember I did make posters and stuff to go around, and I did those in class. So they're not as pretty looking, they're very plain, and they've just got key information on that I needed to remember. But for me it was just writing the same stuff out as many times as possible so I could see it in different ways and it will stick in my head in different forms. And I have also got some Scrooge stuff. There's not much on Scrooge, just got some Scrooge key quotes again there, and then I've got again the little pack of key quotes which are just normal quotes. So I didn't get much on Scrooge. Just got one on, yeah, all the characters. There's only 2 flashcards for these, which was quite irritating because the question was on poor and suffering, and I didn't really have much on that, so it was very much making stuff up. This is why you need to be as prepared as possible and make sure you do your revision. There you go. And then I have all my poetry stuff. I was so worried about poetry that I did so many flashcards for poetry. There is so much to know, but when you actually get in the exam I think it's a lot easier and it just kind of clicks. Yeah, you can see I have one pile here of flashcards, and then I've got another, and I have my other pile here. I made this one first, and this is the one that I like to use because it has everything on there. So I've got my message, themes, context, and this is all the poems in my spec on what I needed to know. This is everything. So I carried this around with me, used this as like a Bible before my exam. So I was there going through all these flashcards, making sure I knew everything there was to know. But then also last minute in exam season I made these flashcards. So I'll go through these ones first and then go through the ones that I actually used. Here's my card on tissue. I didn't like tissue as a poem, as you can probably tell. There's not that much on it. And again, it's like all my other flashcards, very simple in that it just says what I need to know. Got checking out my history. Nothing on the back of that one. As you can tell, none of these have colour. That is because I didn't have time to colour them. It was probably the morning before my exam that I was making these. There's quite a few as well. I think there's 14 poems, so I've probably got about 14 of these. Put these just here. Maybe let's try and go 2 at a time if I can. You can probably tell the ones that I liked and disliked. They're the ones with colours. I probably did those first and found them more interesting to write about. I have got so many. They are all my last minute flashcards that I did. And then I'll move on to the big block of flashcards I have, which I used for my exam right before. Here it is. There. So I have got my message, the poem, so I understood what the poem was about. Then I've got my themes in there, so this is quite easy to link it with other poems if I need to. And then I've got some context in there, as it's always important to add context. Always make sure you know at least a little bit, as it is a criteria that gives you easy marks if you mention something right. And I've got my form, structure, and then a bit about the themes I was talking about. And then the poems I can link it to depending on what the question is. My quotes, I've only got a few quotes for each, as it's a lot to remember if you have to remember one for each poem. So I've got quote, quick analysis, another quote, and I've only got about 5 for each poem. So I'll just go through each of the poems so you can see the kind of stuff I wrote. Also, try and ignore if there's any spelling mistakes. I think I did all of these rushed, so there may be a few spelling errors and stuff might not be clear. As you can see, that also each poem has a different colour. There is absolutely no reason behind this. Just that I find it a bit easier to learn if there's different colours, and I think that poem is this colour and it just helps me remember a bit better, and it also looks prettier if each is a different colour. But as you can see, I tried it both ways, using the white cards and then using the coloured cards, just because, again, I like to make sure I tried as many different methods as possible to make everything stick. And again, I try and make my cards as neat as I can, just because it's easier to process if it's just simply in front of me and not a mess. And then that's it for my flashcards. That is everything I use, excluding the Inspector Cool cards, as I do not have those. But this is what I use to get my level 9 in English literature. And this took me quite a lot of time to make, and it shows that you do need to put effort in when it comes to your exams, especially with the new GCSEs, as for my year we didn't know what to expect, so I just did everything I possibly could and hoped for the best. In no way was I aiming for a 9 or even expected to get it. It was just do your best and see what happens. But hopefully from these cards you can see how I structure them. Maybe there's some interesting points on there that you might like to consider for your own essays. But yeah, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, give a thumbs up, and also leave a comment if you found these useful, if you like making flashcards or different things that you use, just so maybe I can steal some of your ideas to improve my A-level studies. But thank you for watching.